Luvdisc, one of the most notoriously terrible Pokemon to ever be created. This heart-shaped fish looks like it should evolve into a Alomomola, and honestly when I first got into Pokemon, I thought it did for years. But surprisingly, it doesn't evolve at all, and its stats, they're abysmal. Its best attacking stat is special attack at a measly 40 points. To put that into perspective, that's only 5 points higher than Ghastly's attack stat, which is a Pokemon that evolves 2 times, and it's intentionally meant to have a terrible attacking stat. Its bulk isn't much better. It has 55 defense and 65 special defense with just a bit over 40 HP, which is strictly worse than Gengar's bulk. All of those stats are worse than Gengar's, and Gengar is designed to be a glass cannon. The one somewhat redeeming quality? Speed. At 97 base speed, it's decent. In a format like OU, this wouldn't really turn many heads. Pokemon like Iron Valiant, Iron Moth, and Dragapult easily outspeed it. Not to mention any Scarf Pokemon. So I realized it wasn't exactly fair to compare Luvdisc to the highest tier in Pokemon. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through some Pokemon in Luvdisc's own tier. So Meowstic outspeeds it. Mismagius outspeeds it, Ninetales outspeeds it. And most of the Pokemon I mentioned aren't, of course they're not really that good, they're in the ZU tier for a reason. Yet, so many of them have higher speed than Luvdisc, and if you look at their other stats, they easily have a stat that's over 80 or 90. Meanwhile, Luvdisc's only stat above even 70 is speed. So, to have the only thing going for it at 97 points only, isn't really great. But here's where things get interesting. We're talking about random battles, where Pokemon's levels scale based on performance. Powerhouses like Zacian get knocked down to level 64, and those OU threats I mentioned, they're all under level 80 in Gen 9 Randbats. Meanwhile, Luvdisc, being so terrible, sits at level 100. So that decent speed stat of 97 suddenly becomes blazing fast, reaching over 250. And only a handful of Pokemon can match that level of speed. For example, Regieleki, Dragapult, and Faceless Ice Cube, and Deoxys Attack. Now this isn't a full list of the Pokemon that outspeed Luvdisc. There are others, but they're very few. I doubt there are more than 10 to 15 Pokemon at best that outspeed Luvdisc without a boost to their speed. Other than those Pokemon, only other Scarf Pokemon would be able to outspeed Luvdisc. But even then, some Scarf Pokemon, like for example Emboar, can't keep up at all. So Luvdisc has speed going for it in random battles. And that's it. Its level 100 special attack barely reaches 130, which is pretty pathetic. In my opinion, you typically want stats to be over 200. 200 is considered, in my opinion, average. But then you have Luvdisc with its special attack at 130, which is absolutely pathetic. Now historically, Luvdisc had one saving grace: Toxic. The strategy was simple: poison the opponent and then stall them out using substitute until they fainted. With Luvdisc's superior speed, landing Toxic and getting up a substitute before taking damage was pretty reliable. This was Luvdisc's signature set in random battles for generations. Literally every other generation of random battles has Luvdisc running this exact set, until Gen 9 changed everything. Gen 9 implemented a massive move purge. Powerful staples like Scald and Knockoff were all cut, and crucially for our heart-shaped friend, so was Toxic. This purge devastated many Pokemon. For example, bulky water stall types like Gastrodon and Alomomola felt the loss of Scald. But for Luvdisc, losing Toxic completely destroyed its only viable strategy. The DLC offered a glimmer of hope, with the prospect of the redistribution of these moves. And in this redistribution, Alomomola got Scald back, Umbreon reclaimed Toxic before its Randbat set would only be running Thunder Wave. But not everyone was so lucky. Blissey never recovered Toxic, for example, and neither did Luvdisc. At least Blissey could fall back on being an excellent special war. But what could Luvdisc possibly do now? The issue with losing Toxic is that Luvdisc doesn't really have much in its move bank. If we look at these moves, Agility is completely useless for a Pokemon that fully outspeeds. Aqua Jet is useless. Honestly, all of the attacks are useless because this Pokemon has 30 base attack. Yeah, maybe you could run some Sweet Kiss Confusion gimmicks or Whirlpool, but as you can see, these moves are extremely limited and very niche overall. There's no consistent strategy that you can really bring out over here. There's some decent offensive moves, but you can't really run an offensive set. So you want something maybe that boosts stats or really messes with the opponent. And there's only a handful of moves that could even potentially do that. For example, Charm or Endeavor. Now that it no longer gets Toxic, what happened to Luvdisc? So now we get into Luvdisc's first set. It was pretty painful. Surf, Ice Beam, Wish, and Protect, with leftovers. But the idea behind Wish Protect sets is usually to heal enough damage between Wish and leftovers that you can't be KO'd. The problem, almost anything can 2-hit KO Luvdisc anyways, even with the leftovers healing. Add in its pitiful 40 base attack and its attacks may as well have been splash damage. Another idea behind Wish is that you can heal other Pokemon in your team, and Wish scales with the HP of the Pokemon that used it. So for example, if the Blissey were to use Wish and then you swapped into an attacker like Greninja, it would heal a lot more than just 50% because half of Blissey's HP is much more than half of Greninja's HP. But Luvdisc has not even 50 HP, so it doesn't even provide that much healing even if you were to swap out with it. Now there were some variants. For example, they tried Icy Wind and Charm instead of, I don't remember which move they swapped out, it was either Surf or Ice Beam. Now Icy Wind could occasionally annoy setup sweepers who couldn't boost their speed, but it was extremely niche. Charm did have more potential, dropping the physical attack by 2 stages, which theoretically crippled a lot of physical threats, and it did end up actually doing that, for example Dragonite, Salamence and Haxorus. But since opponents could just literally switch out, unless their entire team was physical attackers without Defiant as their ability, even this was a stretch. These are the viability rankings for a few of the months early on when this set was being run. And as you can see, Luvdisc consistently has the lowest win rate in random battles out of every Pokemon. It's never really able to get over a 42-ish% at best win rate. And it's not just a one-time thing. Luvdisc has literally been a Pokemon with the lowest win rate in Gen 9 random battles probably since Gen 9 came out, which tells you just how terrible this Pokemon is. On the 20th of January 2024, they tried something completely different. They added another set, Endeavor, Substitute, Surf, and Whirlpool with heavy duty boots instead of leftovers. So this cheese strategy was simple. You substitute exactly 4 times to reach 1% HP, and the set was specifically designed so that you could always use 4 substitutes from full HP. And then you use Endeavor to bring the opponent down to your level and then finish them off with Surf. The problem with this set was that it was very difficult to get Whirlpool and Endeavor to work properly, because using Whirlpool risks taking damage that ruins the precise HP calculation that lets you survive 4 substitutes at 1% HP. Although Whirlpool isn't strictly necessary, because even if they switch out, you can still Endeavor the new Pokemon down to 1 HP instantly. But this set is just really a one-time gimmick. It falls apart against recovery moves because Endeavor only has 8 PP. Now, recovery moves do also have 8 PP, but at least it means that you can stall out Endeavor so that the next switch in doesn't end up getting Endeavor down to 1%. Scarf Pokemon can also outspeed it. Ghost Pokemon ignore the strategy entirely because they're immune to Endeavor, and sound moves like Psychic Noise shut it down completely because Substitute becomes useless. There's also Infiltrator, but only a couple of Pokemon like Spiritomb and Dragapult end up getting it, and it's not very common to get. Of course, we're just saying like a 1-in-1 matchup out of the hundreds of Pokemon inside random battles. So how much did this new set improve Luvdisc? Luvdisc remains firmly at the bottom of the win rate rankings, where it's been since the format began. So sadly, Luvdisc was never really able to become properly viable in any real capacity. What fascinates me is how they tried to salvage this Pokemon. When maxing its level to 100 didn't help, they gave it gimmicky moves like Icy Wind and Charm, trying to leverage its speed since it had nothing else. When that failed, they resorted to the Endeavor strategy. While it hasn't improved Luvdisc's competitive viability much, I'm sure many players would agree that it's become a lot more annoying to face. It almost always cripples at least one Pokemon, which is more impact than it's ever had before. If you enjoyed this dive into Gen 9 Randbats' most persistent underdog, feel free to like and subscribe. And feel free to share your own Luvdisc experiences in the comments. Thanks for watching.